You still don't have a Sega CD? Huh? What are you waiting for? Nintendo to make one? You have seen the games, right? Wrong answer, man. Show 'em. Want to see more?
In 1991, Sega released the Sega CD, or the Mega CD if you live in Europe and Japan. And Sega's like, this awesome hardware needs Sonic on it. And they're like, well, we'll just make a port to Sonic 1 with some CD quality music. But then they're like, no, let's make Sonic 2 on the Sega CD. However, the team working on Sonic 2 for the Sega CD was a completely different team from the one that was working on Sonic 2 for the Genesis. So Sonic 2 on the CD became its own game known as Sonic the Hedgehog CD. Sonic the Hedgehog CD was developed in part by Sonic Team, well, half Sonic Team, the team that didn't leave Sega to go to America at least, meaning that Nato Oshima went from level character designer to director of the game. So that's a nice step up there, as well as new designers like Yasuya Yamaguchi and artist Kazukiya Hoshinano. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those right because I'm really bad at language speaking, if you couldn't tell. The game had a crap ton of composers as compared to the one of Sonic 1 and 2. Those include Yokofima Makanui as sound director, Naofumiya Hariyaga, Masafumi Agado. For those guys were the Japanese composers, while the United States got a completely different musical team. For some reason, they decided that, unlike the European and Japanese release of Sonic CD, that Sonic CD needed its own new sound development team. And those guys were Spencer Nelson and David Young. It is a debate in the Sonic community which soundtrack is better. The most agreeing the original Japanese soundtrack is the best. However, most people prefer the song Sonic Boom over Toot Toot Sonic Warrior. So that's the only thing American has over it. I will talk a little bit more about the soundtrack later on. But yes, the team was about the same size as the other ones, just they got a little bit new members to join in to help develop it for Sonic Team. And they had a pretty lax schedule since they had over a year to complete the game as compared to the Sonic 2 team, which had like less than a year to complete the same space of a game. So yeah, they had a nice time developing the team without any problems in between cohorts because they had spoke the same language and didn't have different work ethics. One thing you'll notice when playing Sonic CD on original hardware is that the game feels incredibly similar to Sonic 1 because they didn't change any of the source code when making Sonic CD. Unlike Sonic 2, which one of the main goals was to improve elements of Sonic 1's code, Sonic CD team thought it was just fine, especially since they are making a game focused on platforming, much like Sonic 1 was, rather than the speed aspect, though there's still a lot of speed involved. In fact, one of the main gimmicks of the Sonic CD is that they want you to explore the level to find different little areas, such as these little roboticizers and stuff like that, cages in the past, and do stuff like that. We'll get more into that in the gameplay section. And one of the main things about Sonic CD that most people know is time travel. Time travel, of course, was initially conceptualized for Sonic the Hedgehog 2, but was scrapped due to hardware limitations. Since the Sega CD had a lot more space on the disc, they thought, yeah, but you can do time travel in this game and make it use up all that space. And what movie did they base the time travel off? Why the best time travel movie of all time? Back to the Future. And much like Back to the Future, they wanted time travel to be instantaneous. So whenever Sonic crosses a goalpost, which says future or past, depending on which time zone he's in, if he moves fast enough, much like in Back to the Future, he sparkles and then goes into the past or future. Unfortunately for the team, it was supposed to be instantaneous. However, because of Sega CD limitations, it is not. It is pretty much instantaneous in later revisions of the game, though, much like the PC port and the Sonic Origins version of the game. Sonic CD introduced two brand new Sonic mainstay characters, including Metal Sonic. There have been previous robotic versions of Sonic in the Sonic 2 8-bit and Genesis. This is the main rival of Sonic. They purposely designed this character to be a foil throughout the entire game story, including the box art and a longer boss fight, a unique boss fight at that. The character idea originally came from the director, obviously, Nato Oshima, who wanted a new rival for Sonic that, quote-unquote, was supposed to be menacing. So Kazukiya Hoshinano had designed the character to be a robotic version of Sonic with red eyes to show his menacingness, Jet instead of running to make sure he's as fast as Sonic, and a shiny blue exterior that's supposed to represent CGI. The team liked this character, and of course, he ended up being a mainstay in the Sonic franchise. There have been plenty of Sonic robots to come before him, and there'll be the ones that come after, but Metal Sonic is the one that ended up staying because this design is just that cool. Plus, the fact that this character was all over the marketing and promotional material of the game doesn't help either. It did help. The other mainstay character introduced in Sonic CD is none other than Amy Rose, who has a very interesting backstory and the just depictions in general during this time. Because if you know anything about Sonic, you know that despite the fact that Amy was conceptualized as the main female character of the Sonic universe, in America, she was not. And we'll get into that a little later. So she was conceptualized for Sonic CD by Nato Oshima, as well as Kazuki Hishinio. I can't say the last name there, I'm pretty sure I'm messing it up. But yeah, they wanted basically a Minnie Mouse to Sonic's Mickey Mouse. However, one of the big things that Sega was like, because they already had rejected the idea from Madonna and Sonic 1, is that they don't want Sonic to have a girlfriend. So they decided this character would like Sonic, but Sonic would not like her back as like a fangirl personality. And she was some of the aspects were made by the two designers as aspects of women they like the shoes and personality, whatever that means. That's what the wiki says. I don't know. Fun fact, if you're a big Sonic nerd like me, you know that Amy did not technically appear in Sonic CD. Though she was made for Sonic CD, she appeared first in April 1992 of a Sonic manga known as The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, where she would be the girlfriend of Sonic, otherwise known as Nikki, because if you don't know, in that weird manga, Sonic is like a superhero persona of a hedgehog guy who's a loser. It's super weird, but eventually, yes, she was conceptualized as the main Sonic female lead, who is a fangirl of Sonic, who needs help. She's also conceptualized as 8 years old, keep in mind, so the characters change ages constantly in the Sonic franchise, so people will just talk about, oh, this character's this age. Modern day, they're probably not that age. They kind of got rid of the ages in future games, but she was conceptualized as an 8-year-old, later 12-year-old, and then later they got rid of ages altogether. So if anyone tells you, oh, this character's like 12, I don't think Amy's supposed to be 12 anymore, especially considered in recent games. She obviously got a rehaul in later games. The most notable thing about her is that in the manual, she's called as Rosie the Rascal. However, over in the United States, for some reason they called her Princess Sally. Yeah, because they thought this character has a similar role to, I guess, Sally Acorn from the Archie comics / TV shows, which is part of the American canon, which was not at all part of the Japanese canon. So they have no idea what Sally is. In America, they didn't know much about this character either, because she only appeared in a manga, which was never translated in English. And Amy would appear in subsequent games, but because they reason conceptualized Sally Acorn as the main female lead in the American canon, she didn't really appear at all in any of the American stuff until 1998 with Sonic Adventure. So I found that's really interesting, the fact that this character existed in the games, and then Sega America basically didn't use this character at all. Though to be fair, Amy barely appeared in that many games, but we'll get to her appearances in other franchises. I'm also not a big fan of this classic design. There's a reason why Amy of all characters got the biggest overhaul when it came to the quote-unquote adventure style, because this is just a weird clash of colors. Though some people like the classic Amy design, I'm not a big fan of it. Though I am a big fan of Amy as a character. And I've talked way too much about Amy, let's get into the other stuff of the game. Much like Sonic 1, which elements were based off CGI, at least the art style, Sonic CD was also heavily based off that. In fact, they wanted the introduction of Sonic in the little title screen to look three-dimensional, so they made these little models here to help them with that, which is pretty neat. These actually exist, and they're pretty cool, if I do say so myself. Speaking of animation, the game is famously known for having an animated intro, and outro, if you will. And here's the difference between the PC and the later versions on the right and the original Sega CD version. And yeah, a lot of people think the right is what it always looks like, but if you play on the Sega CD, it looked like that. It was framed off and very pixelated, because Sega CD, while it could do FMV, it couldn't do very good FMV, if you will. It was animated by Toei Animation. They've done a bunch of other stuff, such as Dragon Ball, which makes sense, and Sonic has a lot of Dragon Ball inspiration. And it is amazing, and we will get to that when we get to it. Here's some of the other characters. We got new animal buddies, like this Robin, known as Robin, and this sheep, known as Sheep. And there's others, like a canary, a dove, and a blue and red fish that also debuted in this game, and they obviously haven't returned because, you know, they didn't even have official names. The Robin and Sheep did return as little animals in Sonic Adventure series. Here are the Badniks, and I don't have much to say about these Badniks because oddly enough, you barely see any of them in the game for the most part, and there's not great artwork for them. Like, this guy doesn't even have artwork. This is Amenbo, and all the names aren't translated, unlike the previous games, so the guys don't have unique names or anything. So this is the Japanese names, so if I mispronounce them, sorry about that. And this guy here just is on the top of the water, and that's about it. He sucks. There's Anton, who actually has official artwork, and he's just a Motobug, basically, but an ant instead of a Motobug. That makes any sense. Badapion is just a grasshopper who jumps around. These guys could be a little bit of an annoying thing, but they don't appear that often, just in one level. And yeah, they just jump around, not too special. Big Bomb, as it's officially called, is just the bomb enemy, but big. Dango are these little millipede or rollipedes, where we call them pillbug guys who roll around at you, kind of like Sonic does, but they're a lot slower. Ga is this moth little guy who just flies straight, and that's about it. They kind of suck. Hataru is a lightning bug that flies around, and then he'll shoot lightning down at Sonic, and these guys are pretty well known because they appear in Stardust Speedway, which is a pretty famous zone. So yeah, they're pretty well known, and they can be annoying, but they can also be a fun thing to kill. Tabasara is a mosquito thing that kind of floats around and leaves gas pellets around. It's a very odd and weird enemy. I don't know what else to say about this thing. Kamakama is just a slicer, but lamer and less efficient. Kanabon is a beetle badnik that just flies. That's it. These guys aren't that exciting, I know. Kimoso is just a caterpillar. Quite literally. Komo is a spider badnik that just jumps up a little bit. Yeah, it's nothing too interesting either. Just jumps in place. Nakabu is a Motobug with a chainsaw on its head, or buzzsaw if you will, and yeah, that's pretty intimidating. These guys are actually pretty cool, actually. You can't hit them from the front because they're buzzsaw, but you can hit them from the back or top. Muso is probably a bagworm that looks like a stoplight that just hangs from the ceiling and shoots spikes out, and apparently can get decrepit at some point. Nose is actually an enemy that has a translated name. Thank goodness. It's like a mosquito thing that flies and then it'll dive down at Sonic. So they're actually a pretty unique enemy, and they appear in future games as well. Neronoa is a snail that has protruding spikes, so sometimes it won't, sometimes it will have spikes, so you gotta keep a watch out for that. But overall, they're pretty easy to take care of. Patabata is a butterfly that just flies in zigzag pattern. Very exciting. Poby is a bee that can sometimes shoot lasers or sometimes swing around a spike ball, sort of like the first boss in Sonic 1, if you will. Sasora is a little scorpion badnik that shoots bullets and doesn't really move a lot. It's just a scorpion that shoots bullets from its tail. Scarab is one of the most useless enemies, or all it does is just move an item box slowly. Yeah, very, very exciting. Semi is a cicada that could drop bombs occasionally. Taga is a little guy that just swims in the water. Lovely. Tamaba, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it, is this little guy. It's probably the sting bug, but I don't see it. It shoots projectiles from its abdomen and tries to hit Sonic. Tentu is a ladybug badnik that shoots bombs, or mines, if you will, at Sonic. So yeah, there you go. Combo is a dragonfly that flies, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, it goes the last enemy. It's a crayfish that just swims in the water. Very interesting, I know. When loading up Sonic CD, you're greeted to a cutscene of Sonic running through the wilderness, and the first time we really get to see Sonic in action, well, rather than in a video game. It gives a really good idea of what his personality is like and all of his abilities in a grand scheme of things. It feels really epic, and a lot of people love this version of Sonic, the design. Now, if you couldn't guess, the original version on the Sega CD looks absolutely terrible. Look how terrible the frame rate is, and Sonic looks really beat here. But that's how it looked like if you actually originally played the game. It's still neat and all, but you know, it's not as cool as it looks as in other versions, which has the full rendered of the cutscene. But yeah, that's Sonic CD's intro. It also plays the song Toot Toot Sonic Warrior if you're in Europe or Japan, and it plays the song Sonic Boom in America. Sonic CD also has a story, like every other video game, unless you're a Mario game where you don't have a story. So what is that story? Well, there's this place called Never Lake, and above Never Lake, there's a mythical planet called Little Planet, which comes there like once a year. The Little Planet is called the Miracle Planet, and is known to have the Time Stones, magical gemstones that control time, and yeah, it makes time kind of move really weird there. Eggman, of course, wants to take advantage of the power of the Time Stone and such, and he goes to the little planet to take over. He decides to go to the past by using its time weirdness to take over in the future, which he does. He sets up robot transporters and metal Sonic holograms to scare off all the critters and take over. Of course, he changes it up too, And of course, next to the chain is his face on a mountain, because of course he has to do stuff like that. Sonic, of course, hears about this when he's trying to visit the little planet and decides to stop Eggman, because that's what Sonic does. He does not like eggheads, I'll tell you that. Meanwhile, a hedgehog named Amy is reading her tarot cards to see if what her destiny is, and she finds that it is at the little planet as well, because that's where she'll meet Sonic. Of course, she does meet Sonic there, and she's happy about that because she knows all about Sonic and his adventures and thinks that he is really attractive, and she likes him a lot. Eventually, Amy finds Sonic in Collision Chaos or Palmtree Panic, depending on which, and she gives him a big hug. But unfortunately for her, she quickly gets kidnapped by Metal Sonic. And now it's up to Sonic to save her as well as the rest of the little planet, because, that's what Sonic does. Collect all 7 time stones in this weird-ass special stage, as well as defeat Metal Sonic and save Amy, because Sonic has to do all that kind of stuff. Our first zone is Palmtree Panic Zone, which is our Green Hill Zone, Emerald Hill Zone, your hill zones of the Sonic. This is a pretty alright stage. It's very green, it's very colorful, and that is what Palmtree Panic is all about. We've got some new gameplay mechanics, because even though Sonic plays exactly as he does in Sonic 1, he can still do Spin Dash from Sonic 2. However, the Spin Dash is terrible feeling in this game. In fact, you'll probably never use it, because Sonic also has another special move known as the Super Peel Out. Instead of pressing down and pressing the button, you hold up and press the button, and Sonic goes really fast after making a figure 8, but unfortunately he can get hurt still, because he's not in ball form. So that's the new little mechanic, as well as hitting these past and future timestamps that make you go to the past or future. There's basically no reason to go to the future ever, because in order to do the main goals, you want to go to the past. There is like 4 different versions of a single level. The past version is more like a primitive, but you will find the capsule which you need to destroy, as well as the music being on the chip channel rather than being a full music broadcast, wherever you call it. I'm not too musical literate, but whatever. So yeah, we got that. You got the present, and you got the bad future, which is the future you get if you don't save the time, and the good future, which is a future that's all great. The bad future, of course, has taken over technology, it's usually darker, and all that sort of good jazz. Of course, these Metal Sonic things you also can destroy here, too. I'm not sure they appear in all levels, but they appear in most of them. And the good feature usually has a lot of weird things going on and some really celebratory music. It's pretty interesting and neat. And that is pretty much all there is to really say about Palmtree Panic's little future and past stuff. I will go over some of the differences near the end of this segment, but let's talk about the enemies you can find. And there's a lot of enemies in this level, despite the fact that I feel like I barely see any enemies. That being the Anton, Musco, Pada Pada, Taga Taga, and Tumbao, which are pretty interesting enemies. You'll also notice from the level design, it's very weird and quirky. It's not designed to go left or right, it's designed to go up, down, and all around, if you will. However, I still think the best way is just going to the end of the level. Collect your 50 rings and go to the special stage, if you will. Even though I'm not a big fan of the special stage either, but hey, that's what you want to do. I am not the biggest fan of the Sonic CD level design, mostly since it feels unintuitive. Even trying to find the capsules in the level can be more of a pain in the ass than it needs to be, and so I'm not the biggest fan of. And once again, there are 3 acts in this level. Mostly the 3rd act is just the boss, so you don't have to worry about too much crap going on. Also, if you did complete any of the type things, your future in the 3rd act will be the bad one if you didn't do anything. If you did a good job, it will be the good future, because they are all in the future. However, the time travel mechanic, or in this aspect, doesn't really change much of anything else story-wise, since you mostly get the same ending, just a little bit, slightly different cutscene. So if you don't care like I do, then it won't matter. Since you don't get much of a bonus other than making a good future. But then again, the bad features look more interesting than good features anyway. Even though it is showcases what happens if you don't do it. However, because I think the requirements are a little annoying, even if you have 2, I don't like the special stage of this game, and I don't care for finding the capsules. It is a fun idea, but I don't think it was executed very well. As well as the boss here, being known as the Egg HVC001, is one of the easiest boss fights ever, that it just passed by in 5 seconds there. The boss fights are very unique in Sonic CD, however, that boss fight sucked. At the end, we've got a capsule here, but instead of our usual ammo capsule, it's something you hit, and then it produces flowers instead of, animals, which is pretty weird. In fact, a lot of things you hit will produce flowers rather than animals, but yeah, who knows. The special stages of this game are ones that I'm not a big fan of, mostly because they control very weird. You gotta hit these UFOs, some of them will give you rings, some of them you have to hit, and you have a limited amount of time being your time counter. And if you hit the water, it'll just get straight immediately. And it's a lot easier to hit water than it is not to hit water. It's a lot harder to hit those UFOs based off whatever. It's one of those things you gotta have trial and error, and I'm just not a big fan of the design. It just feels very awkward. And the mode 7, well, neat, I don't think it's aged very well. It was done better in Sagamania, but that was way later, so it doesn't make sense. And since these are not Chaos Emeralds or Time Stones, all they do is make a good future, meaning that you don't get supersonic like you can in Sonic 2. So you don't even have that as a reward. But you might want to make a good future. It's up to you. I think these minigames suck, and I'd rather find the capsules in the level itself. Even if I feel like they're a little bit BS where some of them are located. Like one time I was planning on doing all that, and then one was completely in a weird spot that you had to look up a guide for. But like I said, Sonic games, it's not really. It's trying to be like a Metroidvania level design, but at the same time, Sonic's design and the time limit makes you want to, beat the level rather than try to find something. So overall, I think the time system isn't that great. However, like I said, it's not that important since I'm not really bothered by the bad future. They don't make a good enough analogy to make it you want it either. So even though this is the main gimmick, I don't think it was played out that well. Part of the reason why Sonic CD is not one of my favorites in the classic era. Not that it's bad, but I think other Sonic games do this stuff better. Next zone is Collision Chaos Zone. And yes, every zone has to have the first and second word having the same front name. This zone is known for having that intro where Metal kidnaps Amy. It's an amusement theme, it's kind of forest theme, it's kind of industrial theme because of weird stuff. The present is just weird, there's a bunch of bumpers, kind of like a pinball, but not really. It's not very good, but it's also very slow. The past is wooded and stuff, which is kind of neat, I guess. The bad future is like dark and gritty like always, and the good future is just all blue for some reason. Yeah, Collision Chaos is just a very, very weird level, if I say so myself. Chaos kind of reminds me of Spray Guard Zone from Sonic 1, but just weirder. The levels aren't long, they're kind of short. There's a lot of weird springs and bumpers, which you'll find a lot in Sonic levels. This one is kind of like, the most interesting thing about it is to try to find the capsule, but at the same time, the level is just so short that it doesn't even matter. So if you're not going for the capsule, you're just going for a very awkward level, which is, like I said, one of the problems with Sonic CD, at least in my opinion, is that they are designed to find the capsules, but at the same time, Sonic is like trying to go to it feels like you want to go to the end of the level, because that's the most obvious thing, since, you got time limit, all that stuff. Like I said, I wish it was designed better. But yeah, you go to the past and future of this level, and Sonic will travel back and forth, just because he's a hedgehog, he likes to travel back in time. Take me back in time to another place. There's only 3 enemies in Sonic and Collision Chaos, those being the Ga, Kama Kama, and Tento. And there's not a whole lot of them. You'll mostly be fighting the springs, which is really annoying. Like I said, they want you to find them, but the level design, it just bounces you around more than anything, making you just like, okay, let me get to the end of this level, because it's just annoying. In Act 3, our boss fight is very weird. It's a pinball machine known as the Egg Tilter, where you gotta hit yourself up, but it's a lot easier said than done because the controls for this area is not too evident. Plus, the bomb is a spike trap. Lovely. So yeah, you get lucky, get up here, but sometimes you get stuck down there, and that's the whole boss fight. The Sonic CD boss fights are very unique, but at the same time, kind of weird. Zone is titled Tempest Zone, which is our water level, and it is basically the labyrinth zone in this game, which is not good. Unlike Sonic 2, which has a unique way of doing water levels, where during the Quadrant zone, you don't even have to go to underwater if you're good enough. Here, you're forced to do underwater platforming. It's more monotonous than anything. It's not as terrible as Labyrinth Zone, but it's also not as unique or memorable as Labyrinth Zone. The underwater level looks a little more interesting, but at the same time, the Labyrinth Zone aesthetic was just more interesting, and there's not that many platforming to do. You're just kind of waiting for air bubbles. Not that great level design. There's 4 enemies in this zone: the Amenbo, Taga, Tombo, and Yaga. I love those names, by the way. So yeah, this level is one of the things like, okay, you can explore. However, since this is a water level, you want to get out here as quick as possible. There's also undescribed currents that keep you going down for some reason. I don't know. This is actually probably one of the worst levels in the game because it's a water level, and there are just areas where there's like no, like you'll just try to explore and see find something, and you'll see nothing. It'll just be like, what was the point of that? Yeah, so this is one of those levels that I do not like at all. In fact, I think it might be worse than Labyrinth Zone, even though it's not as hard, just because of the really awkward and bad level design. Like here, I came up here thinking, oh, this is an other alternate pathway, but no, it is the other pathway it came from, which is very, yeah, I don't really care for the level design in this level, to say the least. The past version is more green, obviously, about volcanoes in the background. The bad feature is all mechanical, but I think there's less water, so I don't know. The good feature looks nothing like the other versions. It's just like all techno, I guess, which is really weird. Like, isn't the good feature supposed to have, kind of go back to its roots? But whatever. Our boss fight is the egg bubble. After chasing Eggman through some corridors, he'll go to this section where he'll grow a bunch of bubbles around him, and he'll just like try to attack you while bubbles around him. This is actually one of the easiest boss fights because even though he shoots projectiles at you, because getting air bubbles helps you a lot. It's pretty easy. So you gotta clear out air bubbles and then try to hit him. But then I guess if you run out of air bubbles, it'll be hard to hit him. But at the same time, it's pretty easy to hit him. Even though you have a lag and you get hit by rings, this boss fight is pretty simple. Yeah, the boss fights are pretty dang easy. Even though this one I think is pretty unique for underwater boss fight. Like, hey, that makes sense having Sonic collect air bubbles as he tries to attack Eggman. But it's fun. The next zone is Quartz Quadrant Zone, which is a quartz of a quadrant. It is a kind of a mine theme level. I am not too sure. It's actually one of the most forgettable zones in any Sonic game. Well, it has treadmills and stuff because it feels similar to pretty much every other zone in the game. Some of these zones don't stand out that much in my mind, especially since the past and present and future versions of stages will have the same ideas, making them kind of blend together. The Quartz Quadrant is one of those stages where it's just okay and doesn't really stand out in your mind, at least. It has 4 enemies, being the Kamaso, Komo, Nora, and Sasoro. Yeah, so this level is basically just the treadmill level, where you're just running through treadmills, including the boss fight, which is a treadmill. So yeah, it's just kind of a mind level. At the same time, the aesthetic is just so mixed because of the past, present, and future stuff that you're even unsure, like, where even this is the quartz in this area I'm playing right now. Where is it? Alright, so the present has some aesthetic. The past is just green, so once again, no quartz. The bad future, which we're seeing right now, is just all bleak and green. And the good future is just blue and gold, I guess. Like I said, the aesthetics of some of the levels just don't work out, at least in my opinion. I don't know. The ideas are great. I just think the execution isn't too great in this game. It's a good game overall. I know I'm sounding like I don't like it. I just wish they'd execute them better, because if they had past, present, future for like zones like Hydra City Zone or something like that, like later, like other Sonic levels, like Green Hill Zone, I feel like that would work great. But these levels aren't interesting enough with their differences. A lot of times it'll just be like, okay, I don't even understand what they're even going for here. A Quartz Quadrant is one of those zones, unfortunately. The best thing about this zone is the boss fight, known as the egg conveyor. You have to run on it to make Eggman's thing get destroyed, because for some reason he has it down. Though you gotta watch out for the spikes behind you and the spike bugging hit you. So while it is fun, it's also pretty challenging. In fact, I think it's really challenging, but not too dickish, if you know what I mean. So this is easily the most memorable part about the level, but at the same time, the rest of the level does not hold a candle to it. Boss fights are unique, even though a lot of them can be easy. This one isn't easy, unlike the other ones. It's a good concept. I just wish that the level before it was interesting. Next zone is Wacky Workbench Zone, and this is one of the more infamous zones in the game, because what it is basically you're trying to go left to right, and there's a really annoying hidden capsule, which is basically where I gave up doing the capsules, because this level has one of the most annoying ones. It's actually not that bad, because at least it's unique, unlike Quartz Quadrant. You won't forget Wacky Workbench, but essentially you got these giant springs at the bottom, which will pop you up to the top, and you gotta get your way back down, because you can't go right from the top a lot of times. You gotta wait for different platforms. But honestly, the more I play this zone, even though it sounds annoying, I actually do prefer it over a lot of the other ones, because it stands out in my mind. It's a unique gimmick to actually do, even if it isn't the most fun thing in the world. It is fun trying to get down, even though sometimes it can be pretty annoying with spikes and electricity. But I prefer that over just boring level design like a lot of the other zones in this game have, where I just forget about completely after playing it, which isn't good, Anyway, Wacky Workbench has 4 enemies: the Badniks, Manamuso, Pabi, and Semi. Though, of course, you'll be fighting the obstacles more than the enemies in this level. And, of course, the bouncing mechanic. Trying to get it right, they bounced me up, so I had to go back down again. like I said, pretty annoying. When it works, it works. But when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Also one of those zones where the past, present, future doesn't really affect much, other than the color scheme maybe. Where the past version looks pretty much very similar, green except purple. The bad future is just brown, and the good future is just like cotton candy colored, I guess. So all of them, I guess, are wacky. So it's just one of those things where you'll get some things will be easier, like in some versions of the level. Yeah, there is minor level design differences, but they're more don't really affect much. In fact, I'd rather have a unique levels for each of the past and present and future ones rather than just having little slight tweaks as they do in the game itself. But whatever. Our boss fight is the Egg Razor. Eggman's in his weird machine and you gotta hit him. However, the floor is gonna bounce up and you gotta basically get up to him and climb up the platforms, but you can't go back down because you will die. Basically, yeah, your platforms get shocked up and Sonic has to jump up and hit Eggman basically, or you'll fall and die. This boss fighting concept doesn't sound too bad, but it's really not that interesting of a boss fight. If you know what you're doing, it's over pretty quickly. If you don't, it feels like most of the mistakes are because of the weird game design rather than anything else. It's not terrible, but I feel like it could have been reworked to be a better boss fight. The next zone is Stardust Speedway, the most famous Sonic zone in Sonic CD. Obviously, because it's very unique. You're basically in the stars, and you have all these trumpets, and you have blasting music that's iconic. Most of the music in Sonic CD, what people say is great because it technically has multiple soundtracks and multiple sound channels to play with, like actual real music. However, I feel like they kind of just do the very generic sounding stuff for a lot of the zones, unfortunately. I think the Japanese version is better, but overall, I feel like the concept is great when it's sounding, but at the same time, I guess limitations oddly worked pretty well for the Genesis titles because their soundtracks stand out. I can literally know every Sonic 1, 2, and 3 song in my head by heart. But Sonic CD, I can only do a couple of them, and that's just because the past, present, and future ones are different. It's because each one sounds generic enough so they can change it, I guess, for each one, and I'm just not a big fan of that. Unfortunately, I wish I was. The songs, they actually introduced Sonic songs in the game. Other than that, that's great. But the actual level themes, a lot of times I'll completely forget. Other than Stardust Speedway, which has a very amazing rockin' one. And this level is just so much crazy stuff going on, but it emphasizes the Sonic speed. There's a lot more fun things to do, and a lot of unique obstacles. For example, we've got 4 enemies, like always. Dango, Hadaro, Kabasoro, and Kanaban. There's not a whole lot of them, but when you do see them, they are pretty interesting. This level is mostly known for the weird platforming gimmicks of it. It does use Sonic's momentum better than other levels in the game, even if it is very weird and kind of hard to figure out. The Sonic Mania version of this level is just way better than the Sonic CD version, unfortunately, in my opinion. However, it's not bad. And for the alternate futures, the past version is all green and has vines, which actually works very well for this deck. The bad future is kind of similar, but it's like has all these unique dark, moody lights and spotlights, which actually are pretty cool. And the good future looks the same as the bad future, just purple. That kind of sucks if you ask me. Anyway, the boss fight is Metal Sonic, but not really. You're not fighting him. Metal Sonic's here and he's taunting us. He's like, I'm gonna race you, Sonic. See if you can beat me, because I'm supposed to be faster than you. And Eggman has a death laser right behind you guys, so you gotta race Metal Sonic from his obstacle course in order to get to the other side. And it's probably one of the most famous sequences in Sonic CD history. Not Sonic history, I said Sonic CD history. It is pretty great. You got rings and spikes and different traps. You gotta watch out for Metal Sonic, who comes out behind you and charges against you. And the mostly matters is when you get to the end and not slacking behind. I haven't failed this boss fight, but I can see someone failing at it. It's one of the best sequences in any Sonic game, and I wish more boss sequences in the Sonic games are like this, because this is actually really fun. And it kind of showcases what Sonic CD can do when they think of good ideas. And that's why Stardust Speedway probably stands out a lot in people's minds because of stuff like this. Anyway, you will be able to beat Metal Sonic, and he dies there, yeah. That's all you get from Metal Sonic, and he becomes the mainstay, but he crashes to a wall his first appearance. So yeah, Eggman's like, oh crap, and Sonic is able to save Amy, and Amy gives him a nice big hug, because that's what a Hedgehog hero deserves. Also love this little sprite of Amy here dangling. It's pretty funny. The final level in the game is Metallic Madness, which is basically roboticized future. It's okay. It's not too interesting other than one little gimmick here. It feels like Scrap Brain Zone, but diet version, and most of the elements remind me of that zone. Even the past, present, and future aren't that interesting because, well, it's a robotic area, so Eggman's already taken over because it's his base. The past version is just indigo. The bad future is just a darker brown, And the good feature is just chrome, because in the future, everything's chrome. Overall, it feels like a lot of the elements from Scrap Brains are here. Not that that's bad, but overall, it feels like it lacks a little bit of identity. Well, not bad. I don't think it's not really that difficult or really that interesting to altogether. It is until you get to this area. This little laser here, Sonic gets hit by it, and it becomes mini Sonic. Yes, there's a little platform area where Sonic's small. So the area design is not that is for reason like very limiting, oddly enough. But other than the fact, but it's really cool to see Sonic become really small all of a sudden. Of course, he becomes bigger later on, but other than that, the platforming for this section for some reason is very weird and janky feeling. But yeah, it's pretty cool to see Sonic as a little baby. Eventually, by Act 3, you'll go into this slow-moving platform part where you gotta jump up above the platforms, but it's really easy, and the platform's been very slow, and you kinda wish, like, why can't this be over? Come on, game, let's go. There's also these rooms where you gotta fight these lightning bug guys, and they're pretty not that hard, so I don't know why they're right here, but hey, this is what they thought was a final thing. But yeah, this is what you gotta face before you fight Eggman, and yeah, they're not very hard. It feels kind of weird, like, why in particular did they have those here? Anyway, we finally get our final boss, and what does Eggman have up in store in his sleeve? What does he have? He has the egg spinner. It's a thing that spins, and this is one of those boss fights where I don't even know if it's possible to not get hit in the first hit. Not that it matters, because once you hit him one time, it gets rid of one of his arms, and it becomes easier. So yeah, he'll shoot his arms out, he'll change little positions based on how many that he has, but because he has less arms as it goes on, it becomes really easy. This is not your best final boss fight, Eggman. It's pretty easy, actually. Like, oh man, you're gonna spin on top of me? What will I ever do? Eggman, you suck. Once he's down to one, Eggman will try to be a pogo stick, but yeah, you just hit him and he's gone, and that's the end of Sonic CD. The game ends with just yet another cutscene, and the music will change based off what region you play, like always. In America, it's just a reprise of Sonic Boom, the ending version, and in Japan is a new song called You Can Do Anything. I'm not sure that's right, actually. So we get treated to a cutscene where Sonic leaves Exploding Island, and he drops Amy off and then runs away from her. I'm not sure why. Does he have feelings for her? Who knows? And the chain blows up, and Little Big Planet goes back in the sky. Did I say Little Big Planet? I didn't mean that. Anyway, there's two different songs depending on the version. America, just Sonic Boom again, but an ending version, so it's not as good as the regular version. You also have a good ending, the planet will fly away, and Sonic's face will go on it. That's exciting. That's all you get. It sucks, I know. That's why I don't care about collecting all of them. Yeah, the little planet is saved, I guess, and it sparkled. Whatever. It sucks, like, well, that's the end of that. Of course, the bad ending shows Eggman with an emerald, but we'll get to that. And the good ending shows sparkling stars go in the forest, and then flowers grow. How amazing. Much like Sonic 1, flowers grow and good things happen. So yeah, this is the cutscene part of the cutscene you get when Eggman gets a cancer mold still, or not cancer mold, it's time stone. Sonic just spins dash and starts rocking him and he explodes. I actually prefer this because it's funnier anyway. And yeah, that's about it. That's Sonic CD. Before we go into the different versions, I gotta talk about the box art, because I always talk about the box art. Here's the Japanese box art in the same style as always. We got Sonic fighting Male Sonic. That's a theme of all the Sonic CD box arts. Pretty cool, nice little image drawn there. And of course, there's always a motivational quote on these box arts. Let's read them. To live a life of power, you must have faith that what you believe is right, even if others tell you you're wrong. The first thing you must do to live a life of power is to find courage. You must be ready to reach beyond the boundaries of time itself. And to do that, all you need is the will to take the first step. Isn't that an amazing quote? The United States box art is a little bit different ratio because the Sonic CD games, or Sega CD games, come in a different format than Mega CD games. Mega CD games come in jewel cases. The Sega CD games come in these giant cases, and they're kind of like the Saturn cases, if you know anything about those cases. They're giant, they're big, and this one's actually pretty cool, even though Greg Martin does the same Sonic face like always. I actually really like the way this looks. He's jumping out of the UFO, Mel's like trying to catch him, and Sonic's like, nuh-uh-uh. I like this a lot. Oh, now here's the PAL region, in case you're wondering. I don't showcase the PAL regions all the time, but I thought this one was pretty cool, because they're right head-to-head. It's the same artwork as the Japanese one, but they're closer together. So there you go. Where to buy and find Sonic CD? Well, this is the part where I talk about where to get and play this game. Of course, we'll start with the Sega CD version. All regions actually have around the same price point, so $38 loose, $76 complete. It can be pretty pricey, but you have a Sega CD, you're most likely getting it for this game, since, what are you getting it for, Night Trap? You know Sonic CD does not play as well as the Sega CD as it does on featured consoles. The cutscenes are worse. There's load times. So overall, you're not helping yourself by playing on Sega CD unless you just want to play the original version. It's not too expensive, well, loose at least. But yeah, the reason you're playing is if you got a Sega CD. So it's kind of expensive that you can do both of them. So it's not the highly recommended way of doing it at all. In 1996, Sega released Sonic CD on the PC, believe it or not. $7 loose, $10 complete. It's actually pretty cheap. It's not the best way to play Sonic CD since there's a Steam release of the game, obviously, but it is nice to know that you could play on the PC. It's actually how people first got the cutscenes in their actual aspect ratio rather than the cropped version on the Sega CD. The first re-release of Sonic CD was in the Sonic Gems collection, which was originally put in the Sonic Mega collection. They had to put it in the Gems collection. And one of the main purposes of the Gems collection was Sonic CD. It's actually the main cover in all the stuff. Like, it has Sonic CD plus others. And yeah, though this game was released on the PS2 only in Japan and Europe, us Americans only had it on the GameCube. Not that it matters to me because the GameCube is my favorite console. Though, like I said, this game is a little more pricey, especially since it's not really that worth it. Play Sonic CD, it's just the PC version again, so they didn't really do much with it before the game. But that's about to change. During the 20th anniversary of Sonic in 2011, Christian Whitehead decided that he was going to workshop his prototype of a Sonic CD, which has the physics of later Sonic games, built from the ground up to Sega as a mobile version, and they liked it enough to re-release it on mobile, on Steam, as well as PS3 and Xbox 360. And eventually that would go on to work on the same stuff for Sonic 1 as the same engine from the ground up, and Sonic 2 from the ground up. And eventually all that would correlate with Sonic Mania and Sonic Origins. I don't know if you can still get this on Steam, but if you can, well, you can't. I don't think it was very expensive at the time. I actually own this, so lucky me, but it was discontinued from the Steam store as soon as probably Sonic Origins came out because, it kind of disregards this. But yeah, if you prefer to play Sonic CD by itself, well, you can't. Also, this port is enhanced, so it includes stuff like Tails, who isn't in the base game for some reason. Yeah. The latest way to play Sonic CD is in Sonic Origins Plus. In my opinion, the best way to play the game because, as I previously stated, I don't think the mechanics of Sonic 1 really work, and they feel really janky in Sonic CD, and they fix out all those mechanics and iron them out based on the mobile version, but even upgraded since then. So yeah, even though the level design I think is still a little rougher on the edges, Sonic plays a lot better in Sonic Origins Plus. Plus, you can play as Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. So that's a pretty good big bonus. This is all you got if you like Tails in Sonic CD. This is what they originally came with. Just one little hidden screenshot. There's a couple hidden screenshots. They're very weird. Like this one. It says Tails says, "See you next game." Why did they not put Tails in Sonic CD? Well, he wasn't conceptualized for Sonic 2, so he wasn't in Sonic CD. It still feels very weird that there's no Tails in it. These images are kind of infamous because they're kind of weird. This one isn't, but Sonic has gray eyes for some reason. Yeah. There's Sonic as a man, which is really weird. These images are really weird. I think there's in-jokes between the people who made the game, like, oh, here's a little secret for you. So they're not supposed to be taken seriously, but most fans are like, what does this mean? It means nothing. Also, Sonic's apparently the fastest DJ ever. MC Sonic. Can I kick it? Come in, bad boys. Okay. This is the image that caused a lot of stir because it's Sonic with a weird face on it with multiple times, and I think it says, like, hell is forever, or heaven, wherever the hell it says. People are like, what does this mean? What does it mean? It means nothing. Sonic CD was kind of an elusive game for a while until recently. It used to have a much higher respect because of, like, look at this Sonic game that no one heard about that's kind of plays similar to their Sonic games because, not many people own a Sega CD, let alone know about the PC version. So yeah, for a while it was kind of that elusive Sonic game, but now it's pretty easy to find and there's better versions of the game. And level design wise and gameplay wise, it just does not hold up compared to the other three Sonic games, at least in my opinion. I can see why some people like it, but I feel like the time travel and other aspects of the game just don't really work as they want it to. While the cutscenes and music can be good at times, and Metal Sonic and Amy, of course, are great characters. Other than that, I think this game is kind of overrated, even though I like it for the most part. I just think there's way better 2D Sonic games. This is probably a controversial opinion, but because of reasons I stated, Sonic CD is probably my least favorite of the main classic Sonic games, going into C tier. The Origins version might be like a B tier, but overall, I just think the level design is just not very good at all for what it was trying to do. And the music, I feel like, is very hit or miss, making it not as fun to play as other Sonic games. I do not go back to this one as much as the other ones. Even with Sonic 1's Labyrinth Zone and some weird platforming elements, I still prefer that over Sonic CD. And if you say you like Sonic CD, I can understand why. Me personally, I'm just not one of those people. I'm glad it introduced some great characters, though. And that is it for Sonic CD, but 1993 has a lot more Sonic games, like a lot more Sonic games, so stay tuned for them.